Hello and welcome back to Better Than I Deserve. Today we are doing something that I'm so excited about. It's definitely a learning curve, something I have not done before, brand new in fact, and I've seen other people do it and trying to learn from the things that I have seen, but wanted to create a video to document our process. And we will be doing breast milk today. Obviously, I am not currently in that stage of life anymore, but my sister-in-law has been gracious enough and compassionate enough to share some of the stock that she has to essentially experiment and of course try to provide back for herself and her child, to make it so that if there's any emergency situation, they have something on hand and or to share with others if they would like to do that. But today we are going to be doing an entire cycle of breast milk that she had brought to us, and then we are going to see how long it takes, and of course that could mean more dry time, anything like that. We will have an entire sanitation process. I have my O3 Waterworks spray down here for the aqueous ozone to sanitize any of the tools and things that we'll be using along the way to make sure that we are as clean as possible, because I want my niece to stay healthy. And of course, anything else that breast milk would go for other food or topical use is another thing. But we'll get into that later on into the video. So at first, we are going to work on bringing our milk down. It is in the deep freezer out in our other building, and it'll sit out for probably about 7 to 8 minutes just so it can defrost a teensy bit to get out of those bags, because I don't want to handle these any more than I have to. And I'll be wearing gloves. Obviously, again, I want to be as clean as possible. It is not food for us, it is for someone else. And we will be using parchment paper, I think, and that will be clean coming out. Scissors to open our bags. I don't want to handle things too much, and we just want them to slide out as easily as possible. And I'll go into details as we're going through everything, but I think I have goosebumps. I'm so excited, and I hope that if this is something that you're not interested in, it's more of a learning thing to share. And once again, if you want to help anybody that you know that would be in the situation to need assistance with freeze drying breast milk, or if you are in that stage of your life and you hadn't thought about that or are looking for examples, this is the one to watch. So we'll move over to the freeze dryer to get it cooled down, and I will bring all of the milk down and start our process and go through all of the details. This is only a portion of the breast milk that we were given. I am very impressed and very excited. Again, if I will say it 12 more times at least. I think there's approximately 16 bags right here, all at their max at 6 ounces. They were filled and then of course laid on their side to freeze. That's exactly the way you're supposed to do it. It takes up a whole lot less room in your freezer when you're storing them. And then obviously, not to mention, for the sake of this process, it makes it a little bit easier to get out of the bag. And for that, we will actually be cutting off that Ziploc, so it'll be right below that Ziploc line, and I'm hoping it will slide right out onto the tray, therefore making it so we don't have to touch or handle anything at all, even with our gloves. There, I might try to see if I can break these, and there it broke in half a little bit, and that essentially makes it so the freeze dryer can do its job and penetrate and dry that much faster in pieces. So if I can't get away with not touching the milk, I will have the gloves on at least to handle it, to break it into smaller pieces so it freeze dries that much quicker without sacrificing any more nutritional value to this breast milk. So we will sanitize our area and put our gloves on and get to work. The other thing that I want to do before we start our entire process of doing the milk was to weigh a tray before it has milk on it. Of course, weigh it again and weigh each of them, and then weigh them when they come out. And mostly that is to kind of see how much moisture is being lost, and it helps kind of keep track of the amount that you're losing and if we would need to continue the cycle. Like if it said it was done but maybe it still needed more time, we would be able to track that as it has lost moisture. So we'll do that, and I'll be keeping track of each tray individually as we go. So for now, we'll move on to sanitizing, and we'll start off with our scale just in case. Next, the pen I'll be using, our scissors, and my own hands. Put our gloves on, give them a little spritz, get our trays, our parchment. I also wanted to weigh these prior, so I'm weighing an empty tray, 24.75 ounces. And start putting our breast milk on and then weighing the trays before they go in. So again, like I said, I will be cutting below that Ziploc line, which allows it to open. I know this is not going to be easy to see, but it should slide right out. Let's take a look here. Beautiful. And if it can break any more, very good. Again, that just makes it easier in regards to the freeze drying process. Put them a little bit different angle. And then this is just trash at this point. So these are all labeled as morning milk. If you are somebody who believes in different time, I think that there is a lot to say about that, of what is produced for your baby at different times. My sister-in-law went ahead and labeled all that, so we are doing our best to keep everything separate and make sure that it all stays together as it was pumped. Very cold. We have all of our milk of those bags out and on the trays, and I'm just working and trying to make them a little bit more even for weight, and then we will weigh them and then put them in. Obviously, I've had to touch some of the pieces, so my gloves are keeping everything nice and safe. Some of our pieces are a little bit thicker, which probably tells me we will have to add more time to this, which is fine, but definitely something to think about to get it as small and compact as possible. Now I'm going to take off my gloves so we can weigh these. It's much easier if I'm not too dirty. Tray 1 weighing in at 49.45 ounces. And I'm going to go ahead and put it in. Tray 2, $45.4 ounces. And tray 3, $44.8 ounces. And our last tray, tray 4, $45.1 ounces. We have all of our trays in and labeled and weighed. We're good to go. We will go ahead and close the drain valve and start our freeze drying session. Do some quick cleanup. We worked quickly and efficiently. I am so happy with how it went, especially for a first time of dealing with something that isn't like ready to go right when it comes out of the freezer. There was no way that I wanted to take these out of the packages and then put them back in the freezer, because it needs to be contained to its own space so that nothing else contaminates it. From the time we got downstairs and got it into the freezer, 12 minutes I would say, and most of those weren't even defrosted that much at all, because I was having to cut the bags down the center, and that's why we sanitized the scissors. But the freeze dryer was at 17 degrees, which was perfect. The main goal is to get it back cold as possible, and that's only 10 degrees warmer than what our deep freezer is out in our garage, so that's perfect. And if I didn't mention, we do have a sensor on that, so we know what temperature is all the time in it, and it's been a godsend. It's been great. Of course, aside from doing this process, we have a ton of fish from when we went to Alaska, and it has paid for itself over and over, and we are very glad to have that. And with this process, now that it is in the freezing process and then will be coming to the drying process, I'm guessing it'll take somewhere along 20 to 30 hours with some possible added dry time in case some of those pieces were a little bit big. After that, we'll take it out, put it into a Ziploc bag a little bit at a time, maybe all at once, depending on how condensed everything is, and we will be, I'm sure, using a rolling pin to get it into that small powdered milk granulated state, similar to what we did when we did our freeze-dried raw milk. And after that, Mylar bag or bags with an oxygen absorber for sure, and sealed up, ready to go for when we get to give it back to her. And thank you again. You are awesome, doing so great at this, and I really appreciate your faith in this experiment of seeing how everything goes. And obviously, as a viewer out there, for anybody watching, to use this as a learning tool of, you know, how kind of easy it can be. It's just thinking about all the different ways that you can use something, which once it gets back to them could be used in so many ways. Obviously, the first would be rehydrating it back to milk. All the things that I've come across, it's a tablespoon of your freeze-dried milk to 2 ounces of pristine water. Do not use tap water. This is more for just, you never know who's watching out there. You cannot just use anything. This is for your child, for consumption. It needs to be amazingly filtered beyond belief. So make sure that you are using the best that you can get. And after that, you would let it sit for a while. It is important to mention that you would be using warm water. So if you have a bottle warmer, obviously that's the best way to do it. If not, making sure that your water is warmed prior to adding the product and letting it sit and kind of, you know, rehydrate in the bottle. Other things that you can use this for would be so many topical uses. The biggest thing that I always see, which is the cutest, are milk baths for babies for any skin conditions of rosacea, eczema, scrapes, cuts, rashes, abrasions, exposure to bugs, plants that maybe have a reaction. All those things would be great. And not to mention, as your child grows, you can add it to their food for more nutritional value, sprinkling into food, or using it when you're introducing solids to your child when that is appropriate time, to thicken it a little bit to make it a safer consistency for your baby. It is a great tool to do that, as well as thickening. Again, when you're using it for topical or skin use, you can create it into a paste so it's not like running off of your skin. Like, it's an amazing tool to have. And again, if this is not the era of season of life for you, think about, if you have a freeze dryer, of how this could benefit maybe somebody you know. You could maybe even make a business out of it. I, of course, did a little bit of searching in preparation for this video and found that there are a few companies out there that you can send your breast milk to, and they will freeze dry it for you. And the consistent amounts that I kind of saw, especially for example today, we did 96 ounces of milk, and The range about 80 ounces, so that's usually probably to like 70 to 90, because to get that exact amount would be hard. They charge $149 plus shipping. Now, I realize that if you don't maybe have like the most perfect conditions, and I'm not saying that a freeze dryer is the most affordable thing, but if you have one, you can help offset your payment with helping others, or you could just do it out of the love of your heart. But there are, again, so many options, endless. I could talk too much. The video will be way too long. We won't do that. But anyways, we will let the cycle continue to run and see how long it takes. And I look forward to checking back to see what our next stage is, whether that's adding more dry time or starting to package. We'll see you in a little bit. 28 hours later, we are back downstairs with the freeze dryer, and it's saying that it's done. And I had a suspicion of the timing between 20 and 30 hours. I went ahead and clicked warm trays on the screen. It makes it a little bit easier to distinguish if everything is cold or nice and dry, but we are a little late. It's after midnight here, but I did have my suspicions with the way the timing would work. So we'll see if everything's done or if we can add more time for a little bit of extra rest. But let's move over, release the pressure, and get in there and check everything out. Our first tray. Now that I pulled out our first tray, I have fresh gloves that I'm going to put on and give these a quick touch and break and see. This has some of our bigger pieces on it from a quick glance that I can see, and we might even go ahead and weigh it while we have it out. So we'll move in a little closer so we can see everything. So the freeze dryer is still running in the case that these need to go back in, but I'm going to look at this larger piece here and see what we have. That's falling apart, and we have lost a little bit of stuff. Let's check another one. Feels good. This is probably one of our thicker pieces. Feels good still. So these feel good so far. I'm going to go ahead and weigh them and document the weight so we can do a compare. Almost 50% moisture loss. Here's our second tray coming out. A little bit more solid pieces. Again, we want to make sure there's nothing cold. It's crumbling apart really easily, a good sign. Okay. Feels good so far. Gonna do a quick weight. The second tray is 26.55 ounces, and before it was 45.4 ounces. So again, not quite 50%, but a significant decrease. Our third tray. I found some cold right there. That was a little bit bigger, thicker of a piece. And another cold spot. This definitely was the thicker tray. I had a hard time breaking these pieces apart while they were, and you can kind of see there's one. I don't know if it will capture it. I'm not going to refocus the camera on that right now, but it's definitely still cold right here in the center. Breaking the pieces up definitely does make it easier when it goes back in to penetrate all those spots that maybe were in the center and not freeze dried all the way through. I'll go ahead and weigh this one. This one also is 26.55 ounces, so definitely Kind of funny, before it was 44.8 ounces. And our final tray, some chunkier pieces on it, and right off the bat, there's a cold one right there. So we'll break that apart a little bit more so it can penetrate better. Same with this one. Now, whether it has something to do with it, these were at the bottom. So we are very close, but not complete still. So we'll give this one away. And this one by far is still the heaviest at 28.05 ounces. So we'll get this back in and add a little bit more time and get them completely dried. We have all of our trays back in, and I feel very confident that this is exactly how this was going to go, which is to be expected, and I'm fine with that because I'm a little tired. But at this point on the screen, with wanting to add more dry time, it reminds you to close the drain valve. So we're going to go ahead and do that, and then we can select the amount of time that we want to add. Standard amount for additional time as the factory settings is 2 more hours. I'm going to be adding for an overnight. There were some pieces that were completely solid in the center still. So as when I broke those down and tried to break them into smaller pieces, it will definitely take a good amount of time. Alright, we're back in business. Our trays are loaded. The vacuum pump is working with the pressure inside of the unit, and the temperature is rising to get back to drying. All in all, very good. It's doing exactly what it should. And I think by the time this is said and done, we'll be looking closer to 36 hours. Not far off from my original guess of between 20 to 30 hours, especially with needing more dry time. So I am perfectly content with that, and it allows me to get a little bit more rest. Of course, for some tips as we're going along, if you are going to try to do this, or for any liquid purpose that we have tried in the past, always the best is the most consistent layer that you can get. For us at this point, it just means a little bit longer cycle, which is absolutely not a problem. I am happy to keep doing it, and once again, like I said, it allows me a little bit more rest since we're looking a little late down the barrel here. So we will check back in. Hopefully everything's done, and we will also be weighing them again, and we'll get to see the changes if there are any in some of those ones that seemed like they were fully dry, and we'll be able to compare the weights, and that's definitely a great way to check. So when we come back, we'll be unloading, hopefully done, and start our packaging. After a little bit of rest, we're back downstairs with the freeze dryer. I have a fresh set of gloves and a myriad of different tools to help us release all that milk from the trays as quickly and easily as possible to put in our Ziploc bag. So without further ado, we'll move back over to the freeze dryer, release the pressure, and get everything out and see how it looks. So our last tray was the heaviest tray before, and it definitely looks a little less colorful than before with our little bits and pieces that weren't completely dry. So that is a good sign. We'll probably just start with this one, our tray number 4. So our tray number 4 that we've taken out first, since it's the heaviest one that we had, we're going to go ahead and weigh this. And it's 27.2 ounces. So that is almost a loss of an entire ounce of liquid still. Feeling the bottom of the tray, obviously I don't have my gloves on yet. Nothing feels cold, and again, kind of hard to tell with the gloves on if things felt cold to the touch. So this feels good. I'm going to go ahead and just put it back in while we do quick checks on all of our trays and go from there. Our original 3rd tray coming out was our 2nd heaviest. We'll go ahead and weigh that. 26.2 ounces. And I feel confident that it is completely and thoroughly dried just by a visual and the feel on the bottom. and we didn't have quite as much loss with the amount of time that the freeze dryer had to pull more moisture. I feel like if it would have been a risk of still having some moisture hidden in there, there would have been way more loss. And our pieces are pretty well broken up, so I feel confident about that, and we'll check our last two. Our tray number 2 was 26.55 ounces. So we'll check and see what it weighs now. 26.4. So maybe there was a little smidge, or very well possible that it's fluctuating a little bit. 26.4. That some of the milk could have, trickled off, because some of it is a little powdered from, feeling around yesterday with our gloves on. I feel confident we're good there, and let's move on to our last tray. Our last but first tray is going on for weight. 27.6 ounces. And before that, it was 27.8. So that's a 0.2 loss. Still loss nonetheless, but again, you're never sure if it's, a little hiccup in the weighing, or if it's a little loss in the unit. I mean, there's air movement, there's everything curling with the parchment, could flick something off, but I feel pretty confident that we are good to go here. So I'm going to put on our gloves and pull out our Ziploc bag, and we're going to start packaging with our tray number 1 here. So I've gone ahead and sprayed our pen and our spatula, our scraper, just in case. And then we have our fresh Ziploc bag that we're going to be putting everything into. Obviously, starting off with the big pieces first, and then we'll move around to the smaller crumbled pieces. I would not use the parchment because it just kind of seems to create another layer of issue. If you had a silicone sheet to put down, that would be a good option, because this slides around, and other things have, like other bits of the milk have gotten below it. Obviously I was doing it for the ease of thinking it would come off pretty easily. Not that it's not, but it's just another layer that kind of gets in the way in this situation. So I'm just going to try to get off as much as possible directly onto the tray, and then scrape it from there, and we will just get rid of this piece. So got a good amount of it scraped. There will be a little bit of residue just from either like that fat, or maybe when it was defrosting on the tray and a little bit got under. That's just going to happen that way. So we'll get this into our bag and be able to move on to our next tray to package. Also went ahead and turned off our unit because I feel very good about where we're at with our dryness. So we will get this in here. Here's our second tray. It would have been much easier just to do it directly onto the tray. One lesson learned today. Tray 2 done. Our number 3 tray beginning. Let's go get our last tray. Since this was our last tray, I went ahead and left our door ajar, and also made sure that our hose is in the bucket for drainage now. But we'll move on to the more fun part of handling the last little bit of this tray. I am just amazed at how well this turned out. It's just incredible. The questions that might happen, does it smell like anything? No, it doesn't smell like anything at all. It has no scent whatsoever. It's literally like just the finest powder, which is perfect for when it comes to wanting to reconstitute this, because that means it will take on water that much quicker and easier, And in examples that I saw other people, you know, having and doing, that it just took a little bit, because you are rehydrating every little essential crystal of this powdered milk, and it doesn't happen immediately. It takes time, just like if you were using it for, you know, regular cow milk or any other dairy substance. Again, I would not do parchment. Either do the silicone sheets or put it directly onto your trays. We're just like losing little bits on here. I'm sure it's not a ton, but I just want to make sure that we are getting as much as possible back from the original amount that we had. We do have a little bit of loss on the table just from it being on the tools. If you wanted to, of course, ensure that you were getting every little bit, every little granule, you could put parchment down on your workspace and then kind of funnel it in at the end. I'm going to say that, I mean, we're talking like maybe a half teaspoon of the powder is on the table. Mostly, like I said, that's from the residue that's on the tools or kind of coming off on my gloves. So not a terrible loss, but it is a amount nonetheless. So our last little bit going in, we'll scrape off that edge. I'll go move our tools out of the way and we will move on to crushing this down and packaging it up. Now that we have our area cleaned up, I went ahead and just sealed our bag so we can get to smushing everything and making it into a nice powder. Usually, if I was doing this again, I would not be using this bag. I would not be using something plastic or just another material other than what it's going to be going into, because we are going to have a little bit of loss of it adhering to the inside of the bag just naturally. As you can see with any product, you're not going to get all of it out from the Ziploc bag, but more like for the visual representation so you can see the consistency and what it looks like for learning and teaching purposes. This is the only reason that I went ahead and used this. In the future, I would just go ahead and put it directly into the Mylar bag and just handle it really slowly and carefully, just so you don't get like a pop-up of dust of it coming out and making it just so it's only being put into the bag it's going to stay in, and then you have a whole lot less loss. So we are doing good here, and we'll just keep crushing this until it's as smooth as I think I can get it. Letting a little bit more air out to fine-tune those last little bits of pieces that are harder and left in there, but it looks really good. Again, I am so pleased with the results here. Crushes down really easily. Obviously, I do have the rolling pin here, and I might take a little rolls back and forth on it, but I feel like we are achieving exactly what we were looking for to get it into a powder with just doing this method. But why not? So as you can see, a nice powdery consistency, exactly what we expected. This is a gallon size bag, as you can see, you know, without, you know, having liquid in it, but we're not quite halfway. Obviously, I'm going to say that's closer to a third, possibly a little bit more than that. So that's pretty good for just doing the 16 bags that we did. Doing some math and figuring things out. When it comes to measurements, obviously a cup is 8 ounces, but when you're talking about doing for a bottle, if you are on an 8-ounce schedule for your baby, a cup of this product, of course, is not equivalent to a cup of breast milk. That is way more. In fact, again, breaking it down for math, 1 tablespoon to 2 ounces of water for your measurement. If you were doing an 8-ounce bottle, you would be doing 4 tablespoons of this, and there's 16 tablespoons in a cup, so you could get 4 8-ounce bottles out of 1 cup, and for sure there's way more than 1 cup of breast milk in this bag, so I would say closer to 3. So just by doing this, dependent on your schedule for your baby, or if you're just supplementing with solids, you could have several days if you were in a pinch for whatever situation, or if you're traveling, a fantastic way. So we'll get this in our Mylar bag with an oxygen absorber and seal it up for our final packaging. I went ahead and went with the big bag for ease of just getting everything in. I think the small bag would possibly work, but I think it'd be a little tight. So we are going to label this so we know exactly when time of day it is from. We have our oxygen absorber out, and we'll go ahead and open up our bag. One thing that would make these bags better is if they opened up on the bottom to stand. Just a suggestion, Harvest Right. We'll go ahead and open up our Ziploc. And because of that actual Ziploc and those grooves, I'm going to turn the bag inside out at the top. Again, this will create a little bit of a mess because of just the residue of that being on there. And I'm going to create like a little spout if I can, and essentially put this bag inside and then tip it over if I can. Again, just ideas. Obviously, other things that you could do would be using a funnel. I did not think about that until this moment, but I have the whole entire top of the bag inside of this Mylar bag, so I feel pretty good and confident that we won't have any spilling. And a little bit left. We'll put our oxygen absorber in and carefully fold back our top here just to make sure that our product is down as far as we can get it. And the inside top looks really clean, so I'm glad that I was able to get that Ziploc bag down in there so it didn't get residue all over that, which would possibly make for a bad seal in your bag. So that looks really good. Like I'd say the first area that I see like a granule is probably like right under the Harvest Right label. So that's, I'd say, a good 4, maybe 5 inches down. But we'll go ahead. I'm going to take my gloves off just so I can make sure to hold the bag well now. And our sealer is at the 7/8 range. And I'm not going to seal it way far down. Obviously, the idea would be that when she goes to use this, she can take out the amount that she wants to work with for a period of time, or just like emergency use, whatever. And if I keep it at the top, then she's got all this extra bag to work with to reseal herself. So if I did it way too low, then she would not be able to reseal the bag as easy unless she was taking large amounts out at once. So I just want to make sure that's down again, and then we'll focus at the top. I'm going to go ahead and do 3 seals on this, more than likely 2 that are above that notch. Again, cannot be more safe than anything, and then we'll do 1 right below or at that notch. Gotta be safe. That light comes on, and when it goes off, you're good to lift. And we have our very first seal at as close to the top as I could get it. And we will do 1 right below that, pretty much right in a line. And 1 essentially at that notch. and it's kind of back to back there. So looks really good. Our oxygen absorbers are sealed back up, and I am very pleased with how our breast milk freeze drying went today. As I said before, I've wanted to do it for quite some time, and I feel very blessed that I had the opportunity to do this so I could kind of learn myself and teach and share with any others that are looking to do this. I know a question that I will more than likely get would be settings on the freeze dryer. I didn't change anything. This was all factory. Nothing has been changed on this freeze dryer. I know that you can make setting changes, but we're pretty much at a point of keeping it consistent until we really get some experience under our belt for personalizing it to the item or items that you're freeze drying. But this turned out really well. Obviously our time was about 36.5 hours, like I had thought from last night in our late night clip of checking on it, but you could rectify that with thinner pieces or breaking it down into smaller pieces. I have no doubt that would go a lot quicker, or just doing less. But when you're doing it and running a cycle, you do want to complete as much in one run as possible. And we do have more milk to do. I'm not going to add that to the video because I know it's probably getting a little long, but I do like to be thorough to show all the different things and stages that we're going through for the sake of learning myself and sharing and teaching what we're doing with others. But if you like today's video or the content that we have on our channel and you're not yet subscribed, please consider doing that, and you'll be notified when future videos are set to premiere or post. But in the meantime, we hope that you're doing well and you're having a great day, and of course we look forward to seeing you in the next video. Bye!